Content warning. This video is about a sensitive topic involving loss of life. We've removed any graphic content to comply with YouTube's guidelines. We aim to provide informative, factual journalism on a tragic event in the public interest that does not dismiss its seriousness. All clips are used under the doctrine of fair use for news reporting and analysis. When it comes to gangster rap, there's a fine line between the streets and the music. Many rappers find themselves in kill or be killed situations, whether it's street rivalries which have followed them into the music industry, or occasions where their fame has made them a target of jealous or unhinged followers who want to get them taken down. But sometimes the tables turn, and the very rappers that fans idolize actually end up turning on them or completely disregarding the value of their lives.
19-year-old Jalen Craig was shot and killed after he got into a fight in the produce section with several other men. One of them pulled out a gun and fired 2 to 3 shots, striking Craig in the abdomen.
I heard he got into an altercation with some rapper. That's what was going around on Instagram.
So check this out, right? The story goes, Henry Douglas, right, the survivee, said, hold up now, bro, like, we recognize the baby. He's our favorite rapper. We just wanted to talk to him, get a picture, etc., etc. He got annoyed about us being persistent, and then while we were walking past, he sucker punched Henry Douglas.
Because some fans don't realize that some of these rap stars they look up to and worship are in fact reckless and careless individuals who couldn't care less if their fans live or die. In this video, we'll be taking a look at the rappers who may well have killed their fans, and the many cases where famous rappers created circumstances where the people who loved and worshipped them ended up losing their lives in the process.
Listen to this small boy right there hanging in the tree right there.
One of the first and best examples of this is the tragic incident that got the rapper C Murder life in prison. If you want to watch my videos uncut and extended, go to patreon.com/traplawross where you can get those for just $2. Also, you can now watch my new drops on Spotify, so go search me there. Here's the video. C Murder, real name Corey Miller, was a rising rap star in the late 90s, as well as being the younger brother of rap mogul Master P, founder of the No Limit record label. Both Master P and C Murder hailed from the infamous Calliope Projects in New Orleans, one of the most infamous projects in the city's history, known for extreme violence and poverty. But Master P's unbelievable success in the music industry had also created a path to success for his younger brother, and C Murder would ride the wave of No Limit Records' dominance, carving out his own niche in the rap game, a niche that would later influence artists like Kanye West, who would sample C Murder's track Down for My N-Words in his controversial song Blood on the Leaves. But beneath the success lurked a darker side, as C Murder had a reputation for violence. In 2001, C Murder was arrested for trying to shoot a bouncer and club owner at Club Rags in Baton Rouge after they refused to let him enter with his gun. He would narrowly escape jail for the time being, getting out on bond and pleading no contest to second-degree attempted murder charges. Unfortunately though, his reputation for violence would eventually catch up with him in the most brutal way possible. In the early morning hours of January the 12th, 2002, 16-year-old Steve Thomas was out to meet his favorite rapper, only to discover that C Murder's stage name was more literal than he could have ever imagined. The teenager had been a devoted fan of C Murder's music, and when he heard his idol was performing at the Platinum Club in Harvey, Louisiana, nothing was going to stop him from being there. Using a borrowed ID to get past the age restriction, Steve entered what he thought would be a night of celebration. The Platinum Club was packed that night, with about 300 people crammed into the venue to see C Murder perform. Steve had entered a rap contest being held at the club, and according to his brother, he would actually beat a rapper favored by C Murder, which would cause some tension.
Yeah, they said it was a rap battle, and the way the hip-hop scene works, so if I'm a promoter and I have a club and you're my artist, I'm going to say we have a rap battle, but I'm going to make sure that you win this battle because you're my artist. Right. But it's not designed to the public to look like that. It's designed to be like, that you came from nowhere and I just signed you.
Yeah.
And that's what they had going on that night. I didn't understand that part of the business until later.
Okay.
And my brother supposedly out-rapped whomever C Murder artist was, or whoever his artist was going to be.
Then, when Steve stepped off the stage after his performance, all hell breaks loose. Steve was suddenly surrounded and attacked by several members of C Murder's crew, finding himself fighting for his life as he was overwhelmed and beaten by the mob that had closed in on him. When the beating finally stopped and Steve lay helpless on the ground, C Murder would allegedly approach the battered teenager before pulling out a gun and firing a single shot directly into Steve's heart, killing him on the floor of the nightclub. 6 days later, C Murder was arrested and charged with second-degree murder, and in 2003, a jury would find him guilty.
Jury found C Murder, whose real name is Corey Miller, guilty of second-degree murder
for killing 16-year-old Steve Thomas at a West Bank nightclub in 2002.
However, C. Murder would manage to secure a retrial after it turned out that the state had held back information about the criminal backgrounds of 3 of its eyewitnesses, after which he would be released out on house arrest for several years while waiting for a new trial. But then in 2009, after a second trial filled with dramatic testimony, another jury voted to convict him again, and C. Murder would receive life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Of second-degree murder again. Rapper C. Murder will spend the rest of his life in jail.
When the verdict was read, there were about a dozen sheriff's deputies inside the courtroom. Corey Miller didn't say a word as the verdict came down. Chris?
And Miller will be sentenced on Friday. He will spend the rest of his life in jail.
C. Murder was shipped off to the notorious Louisiana State Penitentiary in Angola, where he remains locked away more than 2 decades later. But since his incarceration, there have been several attempts at appealing, with even Kim Kardashian working on a long-term project to free the rapper. But C. Murder continues to vehemently deny that he was the one to kill Steve, arguing that nobody at the scene had recognized him as the shooter immediately after the incident, and that some witnesses would only later come up with the version where C. Murder was the shooter.
Right. Now let me ask you this. There were a couple of witnesses who identified you as the shooter. So what about those witnesses?
They were just making stuff up, 15 minutes of fame. That night of the shoot, nobody mentioned my name at all.
Right.
All these people know me, they know my face.
Right.
Know who I am. If that would have been me, I shot this dude. They'd have told them people as soon as they walked in the door that I did.
Do you know who shot the guy?
No, we don't know who shot the guy.
Indeed, C. Murder's lawyer has argued already back in 2009 that his friend Juan Flowers, who is serving a life sentence for another unrelated homicide, has admitted to being the triggerman. However, C. Murder himself has told the media that his morals do not allow him to snitch on another person, even if it means doing life in prison.
So what about the Juan Flowers?
Let me tell you something about me. You ain't gonna never hear nothing come out my mouth pointing the finger at nobody else. Not even to save my own soul.
In 2018, 2 key witnesses in the case would actually come forward and recant their statements about C. Murder being the shooter, claiming that the police had pressured them to lie about the events of that fateful night.
A key witness came forward recanting his statement. In an affidavit, Kenneth Jordan said Jefferson Parish deputies pressured him to lie by holding an unrelated charge over his head. Jordan said he knew Miller did not shoot and kill a teenager 16 years ago, but he said detectives told him to say otherwise. Now, all these years later, Jordan says he wants to right his wrong, and Miller forgives him.
For now, C. Murder continues to fight the case against him, but has so far gone from one defeat to another, and what really happened at that club that tragic night remains a topic of contention. But whatever the truth may be, unlike C. Murder, who can at least live to see another day behind bars, Steve Thomas would never get a chance to even grow up. Whether he was killed by C. Murder, or perhaps someone in his entourage, ultimately he lost his life over nothing more than being a fan of C. Murder and an aspiring rapper. But while C. Murder would end up going down for life for allegedly killing his fan, another, much more recent rapper would allegedly do the same and walk away a free man. I'm of course talking about DaBaby and his infamous incident at Walmart. DaBaby, real name Jonathan Kirk, is a rapper hailing from Charlotte, North Carolina, whose rise to stardom was anything but overnight. His come up was truly a slow burn, as he spent years building his unique persona and gaining fans through a series of bizarre but eye-catching publicity stunts. He would start his rap career under the artist name Baby Jesus, but ended up changing the name around 2016, as he was seemingly worried that having Jesus in his name could lead to some negative publicity. DaBaby would also be known for taking the stage wearing actual diapers, a gimmick designed to make him memorable.
First of all, bruh, talk to me. Is you wearing the Huggies, bruh?
These the lies. See, look, today I ain't got on the Huggies. I had the Huggies on the other day. Today I got on the pull-ups. I'm a big boy today. I'm a big boy today, man. I got on the pull-ups and I'm coordinating. I got the gray ones on because they match with the J's, so that's how I'm rocking out today, you feel me?
By 2018, DaBaby's gimmicks had gotten him some decent exposure, and he was regularly putting out high-quality music and videos, even getting features from some big-name artists like Lil Baby. However, the event that would end up catapulting DaBaby to mainstream status was far from a publicity stunt. On the 5th of November 2018, DaBaby was shopping at a Walmart in Huntersville, North Carolina, with his then-girlfriend and their 2 children, a 1-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old son. He was just trying to pick up some winter clothes for his kids, but this seemingly innocent shopping trip would soon turn deadly. While in the Walmart, DaBaby would notice 2 young guys watching him, 19-year-old Jalen Craig, an early fan of Kirk's music, and his friend Henry Douglas. Little did Craig know, his admiration would cost him his life. Douglas would later claim that Craig was actually just a fan who was simply trying to confirm if it was really DaBaby, taking extra glances to make sure, but DaBaby interpreted this attention as something much more sinister, believing that these were gangsters trying to check him, and what came next would leave one man dead on the Walmart floor. Allegedly feeling threatened by the 2 young young men, DaBaby would make a fatal decision, lunging at Douglas and throwing the first punch, resulting in a violent brawl in the store aisle. As the fight between DaBaby and Douglas escalated, Craig could be seen grabbing what appeared to be a firearm from his waistband, while the scuffle continued down the open aisles as Craig and another unidentified person attempted to break up the fight between Douglas and DaBaby. People around seemed to scatter in panic before we see DaBaby falling on the floor, then picking up his gun and pointing it towards someone before putting it back on his waist. Craig would be hit with a fatal shot before stumbling away to another aisle and collapsing, leaving a trail of blood across the Walmart floor. He would be pronounced dead shortly after, while DaBaby waited at the scene for the police to arrive. DaBaby would address the shooting just 2 days later in an Instagram story, claiming self-defense and stating that 2 men had approached him and his family with threats.
Full story come out, that footage come out, show y'all how I was in there with my 1-year-old daughter, my 5-year-old, my baby mama, on some family, and he walked up on me, tried me, whipped out on my whole family. A lot of you owe me an apology, dog. Talking like they family was in danger. It was a 40 up on my family. Because y'all talking y'all family wasn't in danger, y'all just heard gunshots. And if them gunshots ain't go off, my daughter could've got hit, son could've got hit, me. Lawyers telling me not to say nothing and all that. Call it like to 2 walk down on you and your whole family, threaten y'all, whip out on y'all. Let me see what y'all gonna do. You feel me?
But that's not all. 4 days after Craig's death, DaBaby would release a music video for his new song, No Tears, where he would compile local news footage of the mayhem into the song's intro. The song's lyrics would also allude to the shooting, despite the case still being under investigation, with DaBaby rapping how he'll catch a body like Boosie if anyone dares touch him, and how he's not going back and forth, but will shoot immediately. It would take 4 whole years for the security footage capturing these events to make it to the public eye, the video raising many questions about DaBaby's successful self-defense claims. But at that point, he'd beaten the case a long time ago, after the prosecution had deemed that they couldn't prove beyond reasonable doubt that DaBaby didn't act in self-defense, given that Craig had been seen to take a gun out by multiple witnesses. Ultimately, the case was closed in 2019, and DaBaby was only convicted on a misdemeanor charge for carrying a concealed weapon and sentenced to 12 months of unsupervised probation. But beyond any legal consequences, this situation would arguably catapult him to the top of the rap game, giving him both a massive boost in visibility and confirming his tough guy persona as someone who should not be played with. Over the years, DaBaby has hardly shied away from the incident of that fateful Monday evening. In fact, he would brag about the shooting on several tracks, most notably in his hit song Rockstar, where he raps how his own daughter witnessed him kill a man when she was only 2 years old. While the question of whether the shooting that killed Jalen Craig was truly self-defense remains unresolved, DaBaby seemed to take little away from the incident, and he's since continued to find himself in violent encounters time and time again. But not every case involves a superstar and a stranger, sometimes it's way more personal. And for the next case, we move to the cold streets of Chicago, where lines between fan, friend, and foe often blur with deadly consequences. This is the tragic story of 800 TJ. 800 TJ was a drill rapper from Chicago's South Side, who originally hailed from the Burnside neighborhood, but had since become affiliated with the 800 Set, a small but notorious faction originally from the Woodlawn neighborhood that's known to beef with nearly every set in the city. TJ had made a name for himself in the Chicago drill scene by pulling wild social media stunts.
30 shots up on my Glock on the back, I'm fully on it. You know that. Slept in the same bed with the same I'm spinning on. Man, you better watch who you call your bro. Better won't play without getting sent home. Tyler got all the ops right now. Tell her pull up. We finna walk through that. No, you not. Hey, on my homie. I'm marching right now. We gonna walk through that. Man, on Calvary, we have to walk through here right now. I'm finna get some gas. You got 5 minutes to get up here. Right now. You got 5 minutes to get your up here. You got 5 minutes. Oh, you know what that's at. Stop stupid, TJ. That's state. Oh, smooth. Don't get stupid. You know what's going on. Smoking Tuka like a over. Hey, stop saying you smoking Tuka. That's my cousin. So,
fuck to right. Flip the camera. Let us see where you at.
One time.
You don't know who outside.
When we outside, you don't even flip the camera. Nobody outside. Fuck the cop.
All right, look, hit the line. Yeah, I'm finna get it back to slide. Love, bloody hit the line.
The same bed on the block. I'm spinning on.
You is, oh my God. Come on now. Man. Where we at, Snake? Where we at, Snake? You say I'm in the hundreds. Where you at?
You so do it, huh?
Trill, tell her bring that goofy down, Trill. That ain't gonna make it that.
Why y'all got that clutch hand dumb? What the f? That's that snake, man. Y'all gotta leave that alone.
This would also include him openly talking about selling guns and robbing people of their guns. On July the 10th, 2024, the night before what would become TJ's final day on Earth, he would allegedly meet G. Kane, another Chicago rapper linked to a set called MCB from the Wild 100s area in the far south side of Chicago. The two were old friends, and in 2021, when TJ was locked up, G. Kane would even make a song titled Free TJ. While TJ would post himself on social media, listening to G. Kane's songs, rapping every word, clearly being a fan of his music. However, this time, something would go left, and afterwards, TJ would hop on social media to brag how he had taken G. Kane's gun right from him.
Hey, why y'all lying for, shorty? We don't even do that, blood. You on this popping this blood. Why is you lying?
Tell him stop flogging.
He talking about we stole your gun. How the fuck we steal your gun? Tell me how the fuck we steal your gun. We ain't steal and I didn't steal. You talking about? You gave me the gun and I took off on your way and you tried to run back up on me and I upped on your way.
Get back, get back. What you do? Ball back, ball back.
Got back. I was gonna pop your Franco grade. Hey, stop playing with me, little boy.
G. Kane would also jump on social media, furious about what had taken place, as he would give TJ exactly 48 hours to live.
I'm outside, Splash. You know what's going on. I'm not going in. 48 hours on my son. I don't get no piece of hype out there. They gonna read about it. I'm patching it.
TJ wasn't seemingly threatened, commenting on one of G. Kane's lives how he took his gun and he doesn't even want it, while TJ's good friend and another up-and-coming drill rapper, 650 Lil Mike, would troll and comment how G. Kane had finally gotten the clout that he was looking for, further angering G. Kane, who once again promised how it would only take him 2 business days to get his revenge, while asking TJ to drop his location so they could meet man to man.
Oh, Mac, I'm steady telling you, let's do it. They steady telling me I'm shooting on my crib, like, it's scary. On Mac out. On Jado Grave. And on Mac Grave, 48 hours, like I said, though. Watch this on my Dale brother. Just drop a pen, though, TJ. You want to talk on Mac. I just told y'all what's going on, and y'all got scared. Shut your up. Not like that.
The following day, one user on the Chiracology subreddit would note how G. Kane had been outside looking for TJ since last night and was seemingly not giving up on finding him.
Ask him where the f*** Mike at? Where the f*** TJ at? Tell him I'll be right back. They not out here. Hold on.
A few hours later, TJ would be riding on the Dan Ryan Expressway with Lil Mike streaming live as usual, while still dissing G. Kane, or Tyler as his real name is.
Thanks, Tyler. Thanks, Tyler.
TJ would even joke how G. Kane was probably still watching him on live, calling him a 25-year-old goofy.
I'm out loud right now. You know that. You know, trying to join off that shit. Treated Tyler. 25-year-old goofy. Thanks, Tyler. They told her you thought was supposed to happen. You thought was gonna happen.
Meanwhile, people on TJ's live would comment how TJ's time was running up, with one person commenting how G. Kane was so angry that he was definitely trying to kill TJ, while another one noted how 24 hours had already passed, so G. Kane wasn't going to do anything. But perhaps the most ominous was a user called VLone Sean, who commented how somebody was on TJ's trail, together with a coffin emoji, clearly insinuating that something very bad was about to happen to TJ. That comment would turn out to be prophetic, because not long after, around 5 p.m, gunshots erupted on the expressway between 79th and 83rd Streets. TJ had been shot, and although he was rushed to hospital, there was nothing that could be done, and he would pass away from his injuries. Not long after, the news had already made it to social media, where people would comment how the summer was turning out to be a deadly one, as another Chicago drill rapper, Lil Scoom, had been killed only days before, while another one, Bloodhound Lil Jeff, had died the previous month while trying to shoot someone himself. It also wouldn't take long for people to put 2 and 2 together and begin theorizing that TJ's death might be linked to the stolen gun, and only hours after TJ's death, G. Kane would hop on social media while holding a Draco and grinning like he just won the lottery, telling people to go check on TJ.
On Taz, stop letting the real fool y'all, man. Like they snakes, man. On Tay Gray, we real sharks. Go ask about sharks. We hurt on Tay Gray. I told y'all 24 hours. Call him, ask him what happened, what's wrong with him. Check on him. Check on that man.
Check on that man.
And G. Kane wouldn't stop there, as he would go on a self-snitching marathon, continuously implicating himself in TJ's murder, starting the following day when he would drop a song and a music video titled Mr. 24, a reference to the fact that it had taken him less than 24 hours to get his revenge. G. Kane's followers were flabbergasted by his brazenness, commenting on one of his Instagram lives how it's crazy if he really killed TJ because he hasn't shut up about it since, while another one would reply how his time was ticking, implying that it was only a matter of time before the cops would catch him. But Kane didn't seem bothered, as he would once again diss TJ by calling him a dead troll, while himself taking the trolling to another level by naming the live Big 800 things and pinning a comment saying 800k, meaning 800 killer. As 2025 came around, Kane was seemingly so confident that nothing was going to happen to him that he would even make an appearance on DJ U's YouTube channel, giving him an interview where he would address the alleged robbery incident.
Yeah, over the summer, there was a situation that took place and was viral all over the Chicago blogs, at least. A guy, RIP 800 TJ, he was on Instagram Live taking somebody's gun. And then a day later, we saw people saying RIP to 800 TJ.
RIP folks.
The gun that he took belonged to this man that's sitting in front of us right now, G. Kane.
Although Kane must have realized that this question was going to come up, he clearly struggled answering it before giving one of the most unconvincing condolences in history, while his friends on the couch looked so uncomfortable that you could cut the tension with a knife.
So how did that situation happen, you know, from your perspective, bro, when he took the gun?
I ain't even gonna lie. It was, dang, RIP folks. I know long live folks type.
Then in summer 2025, the facade would come crashing down, as the local news would report how G. Kane, real name Tyler Perkins, and another man named Demetrius Shields were arrested and charged with TJ's murder, with the police using videos that Kane himself had posted online immediately before and after the murder to prove that he had been in the same type of vehicle as the one driven by the suspects, while holding the same type of weapon as used by the shooter. And of course, all the videos that Kane had posted in the days, weeks, and months following the murder would show that he had a clear motive, as well as showing him clearly implying that he had been the triggerman. Funnily enough, the police would even use Kane's social media to catch him, as they would see that he was at a hotel in Houston and send the local police to arrest him. Right now, things are not looking good for G. Kane, but if the prosecution's evidence is only based on social media posts, then it's not impossible to imagine how a good lawyer could be able to beat the case, and only time will tell what ultimately happens to him. But while a rapper shooting their fan by themselves is incredibly personal, there's other rappers who have inadvertently brought about the deaths of their fans simply by inviting them to a concert and disregarding their safety. And one of the earliest examples of this is of course none other than the Diddler. Long before the parties and the scandals, P. Diddy, or Puff Daddy, was just a 22-year-old hustler trying to make a name for himself in the world of hip-hop. But one of his first major events would end in tragedy, setting a deadly precedent that the industry would seemingly never learn from. On December the 28th, 1991, Diddy co-promoted what was billed as the Heavy D and Puff Daddy celebrity charity basketball game at the City College of New York's Holman Gymnasium in Harlem. The lineup was stacked with some of the biggest rappers and singers of the time: Heavy D, Run DMC, Boyz II Men, Jodeci, Big Daddy Kane, as well as other celebrities like Mike Tyson, who were all set to ball out for a good cause. But what begun as an act of charity quickly descended into chaos, turning this star-studded event into a massacre. You see, New York's Holman Gymnasium had a legal capacity of 2,730 people, but Diddy and Heavy D would allegedly oversell the event with nearly 5,000 people trying to cram into the venue, after the event was heavily promoted on the popular Kiss FM radio channel. On the day of the planned celebrity game, crowds would begin forming outside the gymnasium already several hours before the start of the event, which would surprise the security personnel who weren't expecting such a large number of people. At first, everything seemed to be going relatively smoothly, despite the number of people trying to enter the gym far exceeding what the organizers anticipated. However, things would begin to unravel fast when celebrities began arriving at the event, with the arrival of Mike Tyson and LL Cool J bringing the crowd to a frenzy. As Gene Deal, Diddy's former bodyguard, would later describe to DJ Vlad during an interview.
I did a walk around, so I walked around the top of the floor, went down the steps and went in the gym, and then came across the gym, and I seen that you can go up the steps and be right there at the front door. So everybody was coming in. You seen Dougie Fresh, Red Alert, they was on the mic. People started coming in and everything. It was cool. And then when LL Cool J and Mike Tyson showed up, that must have went pandemonium.
The crowd would begin to push towards the entrance, soon overwhelming the security and gaining entrance to the gym. Unfortunately, as the crowd surged into the lobby and descended a short staircase leading to the gym, they encountered 4 closed inward opening doors at the bottom, which created a deadly bottleneck where the relentless pressure from behind began to cause severe breathing problems for those trapped at the front. Apparently, Diddy himself would manage to open one of these doors and would begin to pull incapacitated people to the gym floor, and he would apparently later describe to a reporter overcoming his initial revulsion towards a passed out man with vomit in his mouth. Diddy would allegedly wipe away the vomit and begin to administer CPR, saying how he felt the person's death going inside of him. In the end, the tragedy would result in 9 people losing their lives and 29 getting injured.
A few times I thought I was going to pass out because it was hot on that staircase. You know what I'm saying? And when they closed the doors, I knew something was going down.
City College was a deep experience for me. I was there, I was on the floor, I watched people take their last breath, regurgitate, and die.
The following day, the horror of the event became front page news all over the country, and in the days and weeks that followed, New York newspapers published extensive reports investigating the events that led to the tragedy, with one headline asking, "Where's the money?" as journalists were unable to trace the donation intended for the AIDS non-profit that was promised a share of the event's proceeds. Also, Diddy would from the beginning be under major scrutiny, as the newspapers were digging into matters like who was responsible for the undersized security detail, the oversized crowds, and the missing charity money. Journalists would even interview people from New York's rap promoter community who were familiar with Diddy's past events, which one promoter would describe as dangerous and unruly. This would be the first time that New Yorkers would become familiar with Diddy's face, as he and Heavy D would do their own damage control, attempting to explain how things could have gone terribly wrong. Diddy appeared to shift blame onto the police, who had already been notably slow to respond, and some had even refused to enter the gym after there were already reports of people passed out, as the gym, according to the police, was the city college's responsibility. One article would even point out how the tragedy had derailed Diddy's rocket-like rise to the top of the rap industry, while describing Diddy as a classic overachiever, not shy about stepping on other people's toes to get what he wants. In the aftermath, then New York City Mayor David Dinkins' administration would release a comprehensive 67-page report titled A Failure of Responsibility, which would place the blame on all parties involved in the tragedy, including Diddy, who the report would criticize for numerous serious shortcomings. However, as soon as Diddy had been placed under the scrutiny for what happened, he was also seemingly let off the hook, as already a few years later, the media would begin putting out what seemed like puff pieces where Diddy presented as somebody who had vindicated himself of all wrongdoing, and his career behind the scenes of the rap industry would continue to prosper.
People have not forgotten what happened, including the event's promoter, 22-year-old Sean Puffy Combs. He was cited in the New York City Deputy Mayor's report for failing to adequately alert student organizers to the need for strong security and crowd control. Since then, Combs has maintained a low profile in the press, which he feels has wrongly portrayed him.
I'm famous for like the kid in their minds who threw the tragic City College, and that's kind of hard for me sometimes to live with. In the first couple of days when it happened, there was nobody to really answer for what was going on, you know what I'm saying? So I think the media and everybody was trying to figure out why this happened. It was just a big media circus, you know what I'm saying? It was real scary for me. I didn't know like how to defend myself and something. I'd never been put in that position, and I was just trying to do something to, you know what I'm saying, something for my community, you know what I'm saying? Something to give us a place to go like I had been doing. It wasn't the first time I threw events.
However, almost a decade later in 1999, families of the victims would get at least some vindication, as Diddy and Heavy D, as the promoters of the event, were found 50% responsible for the tragedy, while the City College were found to be responsible for the other half, and both parties would be ordered to pay for the damages to the families of the victims. However, for Diddy, who was already a millionaire at this point, paying a few $100,000 hardly seemed like a real punishment for the loss of 9 innocent lives. Moreover, some people believe this tragedy actually boosted Diddy's career by putting his name in headlines nationwide, giving him the notoriety that he would later use to build his empire. Sadly, Diddy's brutal crowd crush was far from the last time that a careless rap star would host an unsafe environment, leading to the deaths of numerous fans. And the most infamous example of this in the modern era is, of course, Travis Scott.
Well, Houston police just released a full report into the investigation of the Astroworld concert tragedy. It was back in November of 2021 when that crowd surged towards the stage where hometown rapper Scott Travis was performing, or Travis Scott, I should say. 10 people were killed, dozens of others were hurt.
On November the 5th, 2021, Travis Scott's third annual Astroworld Festival at NRG Park in Houston was packed with 50,000 eager fans who had no idea that they were walking into a catastrophe waiting to happen. The warning signs were there from the very beginning.
Let's go!
Even before Scott took the stage, the mosh pit directly in front of the main stage had become so dangerous that people were already losing consciousness from the crushing conditions. Festival coordinators could see the deadly conditions building, with some sending desperate warnings to organizer that people were going to die if the show wasn't stopped before it even began. But despite the numerous warning signs, the organizers pushed forward with the show, and when Scott took the stage as planned, what followed was an absolute massacre. At 9:38 p.m, as Scott's performance reached its peak, the crowd surged towards the stage like a human tsunami.
The crowd began to compress towards the front of the stage. Okay, and that caused some panic.
Just like with Diddy's tragedy over 30 years earlier, it was a slow, crushing compaction that turned excited fans into victims who were literally crushed to death, unable to breathe as the weight of thousands of people pressed down on them. The youngest victim was just 9-year-old Ezra Blount, who had come to see his hero perform, but was instead trampled and placed in a medically induced coma before tragically dying days later.
9-year-old Ezra Blount says that Dallas child has died. Ezra was on life support after he was trampled during a crowd surge during the Travis Scott performance at that festival. His father, Treston, saying last week that Ezra was on his shoulders when he lost consciousness in the crowd of people, and Ezra fell to the ground.
The other victims ranged from age 14 to 27, all young people with their whole lives ahead of them who had now been reduced to statistics in a preventable tragedy. But even as emergency vehicles with flashing lights pushed through the crowd, and even as fans screamed for help and chanted for him to stop the show, Scott would continue performing, and for almost 40 agonizing minutes after police declared it a mass casualty event, the music kept playing while people died in the crowd. Scott later claimed that he couldn't hear the screams and didn't know people were dying, although there were numerous shots that seemed to challenge that narrative. Most famously, Scott even acknowledging the ambulance driving through the middle of the crowd. The full recording of his performance, which is still available online, makes it difficult to place all of the blame on Scott though, because despite the scale of the tragedy, there were seemingly few obvious signs that could be observed from the stage that a mass casualty event was taking place right in front of his eyes, with Scott even ending the performance like any other show, ironically telling his audience to get home safe.
Show ends around 10:12, with Scott closing it out, running about 72 minutes in all, and continuing about 42 minutes after police first reported that multiple people had been trampled.
But when the dust settled and the bodies were counted, 10 fans would end up losing their lives and hundreds more were injured, with over 300 people requiring medical treatment. In the aftermath, Travis Scott would post what many considered a tone-deaf Instagram non-apology that felt more like damage control than genuine remorse.
I just want to send out prayers to the ones that was lost last night. We're actually working right now to identify the families so we can help assist them through this tough time. You know, my fans really mean the world to me, and I always just really want to leave them with a positive experience. And anytime I can make out, you know, anything that's going on, I stop the show and, help them get the help they need, I could just never imagine the severity of the situation.
He would offer to pay for victims' funerals, but 7 of the 10 families rejected his money, understandably wanting justice, not charity. But justice would never come, as a grand jury in June 2023 would decline to indict Scott or anyone else, essentially giving the event organizers a free pass despite their obvious shortcomings. In what felt like either a staggering carelessness or a calculated PR move, Travis Scott would go on to release his highly anticipated album, Utopia, which would end up going #1 and breaking streaming records on the very same day that the Houston police published a sprawling report detailing the horrors of that tragic night. By 2023, Scott was back on the road with his Circus Maximus tour, and venues around the world welcomed him with open arms, while fans flocked to see him perform as if 10 people hadn't been crushed to death at his last major event. And while Houston pushed back against his return, with the police union declaring "not in our city, not again," the rest of the world seemed ready to forgive Scott, who has since returned back to the top of the music industry, as well as receiving numerous highly lucrative business deals with companies like Nike and even the Barcelona soccer team. The story of Astroworld stands as one of the most heartbreaking tragedies in the modern music era. And while the extent of Travis Scott's personal responsibility remains unclear, the fact that no one was ultimately held accountable feels like a profound injustice, one that the victims and their families will likely continue to challenge for years to come. But while the Astroworld tragedy was a single, preventable failure driven by poor decisions and oversight, what comes next is far more tangled, unfolding through a train of events set in motion long before anyone could understand where it was leading, ending in a tragedy where a childhood fan of Lil Durk lost his life in a cruel twist of fate. When the Chicago Chicago drill scene first blew up in the early 2010s, it became the favorite genre of everyone, ranging from white suburban kids who had become obsessed with the raw energy and danger of the music, to other street kids from all over America who saw their own struggles reflected in the drill sound, with one of these kids being Lil Pab from Savannah, Georgia, who would seemingly become a fan of Lil Durk in particular, tweeting about him several times during 2012 and 2013. Meanwhile, years later, Lil Durk, who was already a star, would publicly show love to a rising southern rapper named Quando Rondo, who would just so happen to be Lil Pab's cousin. Then, during one fateful night in November 2020, a rap beef that had been slowly developing between Durk and his OTF crew and NBA Youngboy and his affiliates would come to a tragic culmination, as Quando, who was Youngboy's artist, became tied to the killing of Durk's close friend King Von. While caught in the middle of it all was Lil Pab, no longer a young rap fan, but one of Quando's closest associates in the rap game. In an effort to get revenge for King Von, Durk allegedly arranged a plot to have Quando killed in Los Angeles. The alleged plot began to take shape on August 18th, 2022, when Durk's associates learned that Quando Rondo was staying at a Los Angeles hotel. Within hours, a deadly conspiracy was set in motion. That same day, it's claimed that 5 of Durk's OTF members, DeAndre Wilson, Keith Jones, David Lindsay, Asa Houston, and a 5th unnamed suspect, boarded flights from Chicago to San Diego, all allegedly funded by Durk and his OTF label. But Durk was careful to cover his tracks, even texting an associate arranging the flights with a chilling message instructing them not to book any flights under names connected to him. This instruction was not followed. While his hitmen were en route to do his dirty work, surveillance footage would later show Durk himself was staying at a house in San Fernando Valley, close enough to oversee the operation, but far enough to maintain plausible deniability. Once the crew arrived in Los Angeles, they would meet with Kayvon Grant, a top OTF associate who had flown in on a private jet with Durk himself. Grant became the operations coordinator, booking hotel rooms for the killers, purchasing 4 ski masks to conceal their identities, and obtaining 2 luxury sedans for the hit. But most disturbing of all, Grant armed the crew with multiple firearms, including one that had been illegally converted into a fully automatic machine gun by using a switch. The next morning, August 19th, the hunt began as the OTF crew would begin stalking their prey. They followed Quando and his cousin around LA like predators, tracking them to a smoke dispensary, then to a clothing store in West Hollywood, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. That moment would come when Quando's black Cadillac Escalade pulled into a gas station directly across from the popular Beverly Center shopping mall. Houston strategically parked his vehicle behind the station, creating an escape route, while Jones, Lindsay, and the last gunman prepared for the ambush. In broad daylight, at one of the busiest intersections in the city, filled with bystanders watching, the 3 killers would emerge from their vehicle and open fire, turning a routine gas stop into an absolute bloodbath. But the hit went wrong, and Quando's cousin Lil Pab, real name Savia Robinson, a fellow gangster from Savannah, Georgia, would catch a bullet instead, later succumbing to his injuries. Ironically, Pab's murder would end his life just before he was due to face court on RICO charges of his own in his native city. Pab, also known to the streets as Band Up Pablo, was facing serious federal charges alongside 10 other gang members in a case that had been building since January 2019. The RICO indictment accused him of participating in a 9-month crime spree that included theft, burglary, car theft, and fraudulent financial transactions, and the charges weren't minor. Lil Pab had specifically been accused of stealing 10 vehicles worth over $100,000 from the Chatham Parkway Collision Center back in August 2017. He was also facing other charges for fleeing from the police after leading officers on a high-speed chase from Georgia all the way to South Carolina. But despite his criminal charges, Lil Pab had been trying to turn his life around while out on bond in the last 2 years. He'd started 2 legitimate businesses, a trucking company called A&S Enterprise Carriers, and a French bulldog breeding operation called Supreme Exotic Frenchies, but the streets had marked him for death before he could truly escape. Lil Pab was scheduled to appear in court on August the 26th, just 7 days after he was gunned down in Los Angeles, but Lil Durk's alleged thirst for revenge ensured that Lil Pab would never make it to that courtroom, and in the process, shattered the very career that Lil Durk had spent over a decade building. But of course, Durk would first try to cover his tracks. As his co-conspirators were being arrested in Chicago, Durk frantically booked multiple international flights, all allegedly having the same end destination, Dubai, United Arab Emirates. Durk's lawyers would argue that this is because Durk often had business dealings in the UAE, as well as being a Muslim and sharing his spiritual connection to the country. But interestingly, the country is also known not to have a strict extradition treaty with the US. However, federal agents caught Durk at Miami Airport just 1 hour before his private jet was scheduled to depart, ending his bid for freedom and sealing his fate. Now, the murder of Lil Pab was allegedly a calculated hit job, but sometimes the danger comes from the chaos that these rappers attract. When that chaos spills into the public spaces, innocent lives can get caught in the crossfire, which takes us to the last story that's about none other than Tupac Shakur, and how his beef with some disgruntled fans led to the death of a completely innocent child. Tupac Shakur is a name that still sends chills down the spines of hip-hop fans worldwide, because of both his legendary status as well as the trail of violence that seemed to follow him everywhere he went. And while most people know about his infamous 1996 murder in Las Vegas, few people know the darker chapters of Tupac's legacy, a case from 1992 where the future rap icon might have been responsible for the death of someone who could have never even defended themselves, a 6-year-old child. It was August 22nd, 1992 in Marin City, California. The community's 50th anniversary festival was in full swing, but this sunny afternoon gathering would soon transform into a nightmare that would haunt the neighborhood forever.
5150 is in the house. Hey. What you say it? Hey, haha. The jungle's in the house.
When Tupac first arrived at the festival that afternoon, everything seemed perfect. He was basking in the limelight after the success of his recent movie Juice, and for over an hour, he would play the part of celebrity perfectly, signing autographs, posing for photos, and taking in the adoration of people who remembered when he had nothing. But beneath the surface, tensions were already brewing. Word had spread through Marin City about derogatory comments Tupac had allegedly made about the community in a recent interview. You see, Tupac had significant roots in Marin City, as he'd lived there as a struggling teenager when his mother Afeni battled crack addiction and poverty consumed their household. During these desperate times, he'd even sold drugs just to put food on the table. For the residents of Marin City, they had watched one of their own climb from nothing to stardom, and now it seemed he was looking down on the very place that had shaped him. And as the afternoon wore on, those simmering resentments would finally boil over. A confrontation erupted between Tupac's entourage and a group of drunk local residents who demanded an explanation for his disrespectful words. Voices were raised, accusations flew, and the speculation spiraled out of control with terrifying speed. Feeling threatened by the angry crowd surrounding him, Tupac would allegedly draw his legally registered .38 caliber pistol, a weapon he carried for protection in an industry where violence lurked around every corner. But in his panic, the gun slipped from his hands and fell to the ground. Tupac desperately shouted to his half-brother Maurice Harding to grab the weapon. Seeing his brother in danger, Harding snatched up the gun and began firing wildly into the crowd. 3 to 6 shots that echoed across the festival grounds, sending families running and screaming for cover. But the bullets didn't just disappear into the abyss. In a school playground close by, what should have been the safest place at any community event, 6-year-old Quaid Walker Teal was riding his bicycle, completely oblivious to the adult drama unfolding nearby. He was just a little boy, enjoying a beautiful Saturday afternoon, pedaling around the park without a care in the world. But unfortunately, one of those stray bullets traveled across the festival grounds and struck Quaid directly in the forehead, killing him instantly. In a split second, a child's laughter was silenced forever, and a family's world was destroyed by violence that had absolutely nothing to do with their son. After the shooting, Tupac and his crew tried to flee in their cars, but made a wrong turn and ended up directly in front of a sheriff's substation, where an angry crowd surrounded them, pointing accusatory fingers and shouting that Harding was the one who had shot the child. Both Tupac and Harding were arrested and questioned, but in a pattern that would become all too familiar in cases involving rap stars, witnesses suddenly became reluctant to talk. The bullet was matched to Tupac's registered gun, shell casings were found, ammunition was discovered in their vehicle, but with no witnesses actually pointing out the shooter, both Tupac and Harding were released without charges after just a few days. In 1995, Quaid's heartbroken parents, Okita Teal and Darrell Walker, would file a wrongful death lawsuit against Tupac and Harding, but even in civil court, the truth remained elusive, and the case was quickly settled for between $300,000 and $500,000. But what couldn't disappear, though, was the trauma that gripped the community. The case haunted Marin City so deeply that they never held another anniversary festival. The annual celebration that had brought joy for decades was forever tainted by the killing of an innocent child, and perhaps that's exactly what makes this the most tragic case of all. Because unlike the other victims, 6-year-old Quaid Walker Teal was too young to be a fan of anyone's music. He never chose to attend the concert. He was just in the area because of his family and their interest in the festival. He wasn't there because he was idolizing a rapper, and he never put himself in harm's way for the sake of entertainment intentionally. He was simply a child in the wrong place at the wrong time, killed by violence that had nothing to do with him. I hope all of those stories show you just how dangerous the culture around gangster rap can truly be, and how quickly, in just a split second, you can go from worshipping your favorite artist to losing your life as a direct result of their actions. Rest in peace to everybody who lost their lives.